they called, got me back in my head, oh. No sleep, I've been up in my bed, oh. Let me know, if you feel it the same, if you're playing the game where you saying my name. I can read your eyes, got me hypnotized. Oh, you don't gotta hide, your body says it all tonight. These are the nights I chase, 'cause you stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, and I want you to know that I can't get one night without you. Yeah, yeah. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, and I want you to know that I can't get one night without you. In my head. No rest, no calm, put your voice in the dark, oh. One look, one move, and it all falls apart, oh. Too deep, too soon, got me stuck on the way that you're more, you sway, and you don't wanna stay. I can read your eyes, got me hypnotized. Oh, you don't gotta hide, your body says it all tonight. These are the nights I chase, 'cause you stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, and I want you to know that I can't get one night without you. Yeah, yeah. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, in my head, in my head. Stay in my head, and I want you to know that I can't get one night without you. In my head.
Good evening. Hello. My name is Grant. I'm the host of River Valley Radio. I'm also the Prime Minister of the Republic of New Strathclyde. This was supposed to be the Balderdash campaign. However, my two co-hosts, Connor and Ethan, seem to be currently preoccupied or indisposed or whatever kind of word that you want to use there. Either way, they seem to be busy doing something else. So I'm going to come back to you with another part of The Lord of the Rings because I might as well put out content. So, I can't quite remember where we were last time. I know where we were in the book, but I can't quite remember where we were story wise. But before I do that, what I want to talk about just for a couple of moments is that well, actually, first I have to mention the music that you just heard. That was SFRNG, Sovaji, and Azu in My Head. It's a deep house song, an NCS release. If you're into that kind of thing, personally, probably not my taste, but still a good song either way. And I'd also like to mention the fact that Scotland beat Haiti in the World Cup last night. Albeit that it was probably more difficult than it needed to be because it's Haiti and it's not Brazil. However, that is coming very, very soon, which I'm pretty scared about. But moving on to the story. You might hear me have a drink throughout the night. You might also hear me puff my vape, so just prepare yourselves for that. When they had walked for about 3 hours, they rested. The night was clear, cool and starry, but smoke-like wisps of mist were creeping up the hillsides from the streams and deep meadows. Thin-clad birches swaying in a light wind above their heads made a black net against the pale sky. They ate a very frugal supper for hobbits, and then went on again. Soon they struck a narrow road that went rolling up and down, fading grey into the darkness ahead, the road to Woodhall and Stock and the Buckleberry ferry. It climbed away from the main road and the water valley and wound over the skirts of the greenhouse towards Woody End, a wild corner of the East Farthing. After a while, they plunged into a deeply cloven track between tall trees that rustled their dry leaves in the night. It was very dark. At first they talked or hummed a tune softly together, being now far away from the inquisitive ears. Then they marched on in silence, and Pippin began to lag behind. At last, as they began to climb a steep slope, he stopped and yawned. "I'm so sleepy," he said, "that soon I shall fall down on the road. Are you going to sleep on your legs? It's nearly midnight." "I thought you liked walking in the dark," said Frodo. "But there is no great hurry. Mary expects us some time the day after tomorrow, but that leaves us nearly 2 days more. We'll halt at the first likely spot." "The wind's in the west," said Sam. If we get to go, if we get to the other side of this hill, we shall find a spot that is sheltered and snug enough. So there is a dry firwood just ahead, if I remember rightly." Sam knew the land well within 20 miles of Hobbiton, but that was the limit of his geography. Just over the top of the hill, they came on the patch of firwood. Leaving the road, they went into the deep, resin-scented darkness of the trees, and gathered dead sticks and cones to make a fire. Soon they had a merry crackle of flame at the foot of a large fir tree, and they sat around it for a while until they began to nod. Then, each in an angle of the great tree's roots, they curled up in their cloaks and blankets and were soon fast asleep. They set no watch. Even Frodo feared no danger yet, for they were still in the heart of the Shire. A few creatures came and looked at them when the fire had died away. Fox, passing through the wood on business of his own, stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought. Well, what next? I've heard of strange doings in this land, but I have seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. The morning came, pale and clammy. Frodo woke up first, and found that a tree root had made a hole in his back, and that his neck was stiff. Walking for pleasure. Why didn't I drive? He thought, as he usually did at the beginning of an expedition. And all my beautiful feather beds are sold to the Sackville Bagginses. These tree roots would do them good. He stretched. "Wake up, hobbits," he cried. "It's a beautiful morning." "What's beautiful about it?" said Pippin, peering over the edge of his blanket with one eye. "Sam, get breakfast ready for 9:30. Have you got the bath water hot?" Sam jumped up, looking rather bleary. "No, sir, I haven't, sir," he said. Frodo stripped the blankets from Pippin and rolled him over, and then walked off to the edge of the wood. Away eastward, the sun was rising red out of the mists that lay thick on the world. Touched with gold and red, the autumn trees seemed to be sailing rootless in a shadowy sea. A little below him to the left, the road ran down steeply into a hollow and disappeared. When he returned, Sam and Pippin had got a good fire going. "Water!" shouted Pippin. "Where's the water?" "I don't keep water in my pockets," said Frodo. "We thought you'd gone to find some," said Pippin, busy setting out the food and cups. "You'd better go now." "You can come too," said Frodo. "I bring all the water bottles." There was a stream at the foot of the hill. They filled their bottles, and the small camping kettle at a little fall where the water fell a few feet over an outcrop of grey stone. It was icy cold, and they spluttered and puffed as they bathed their faces and hands. When the breakfast was over, and their packs all trussed up again, It was after 10 o'clock, and the day was beginning to turn fine and hot. They went down the slope and across the stream where it dived under the road, and up the next slope, and up and down another shoulder of the hills, and by that time their cloaks, blankets, water, food, and other gear already seemed a heavy burden. The day's march promised to be warm and tiring work. After some miles, however, the road had ceased to roll up and down. It climbed to the top of a steep bank in a weary zigzagging sort of way, and then prepared to go down for the last time. In front of them they saw the lower lands dotted with small clumps of trees that melted away in the distance to a brown woodland haze. They were looking across the woody end towards the Brandywine River. The road wound away before them like a piece of string. "The road goes on forever," said Pippin, "but I can't without a rest. It's high time for lunch." He sat down on the bank at the side of the road and looked away east into the haze, beyond which lay the river, and the end of the shire in which he had spent all his life. Sam stood by him. His round eyes were wide open, for he was looking across the lands he had never seen to a new horizon. "Do elves live in these woods?" he said. "Not that I ever heard," said Pippin. Frodo was silent. He too was gazing eastward along the road, as if he had never seen it before. Suddenly he spoke, aloud, but as if to himself, saying slowly, "The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with weary feet, until it joins some larger way, where many pass and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say." "That sounds like a bit of old Bilbo's rhyming," said Pippin. "Or is it one of your imitations? It does not sound altogether encouraging." "I don't know," said Frodo. "It came to me then, as if I was making it up, but I may have heard it long ago. Certainly it reminds me very much of Bilbo in the last years before he went away. He used often to say there was only one road, that it was like a great river. Its springs were at every doorstep, and every path was its tributary. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out of your door," he used to say. "You step into the road, and if you don't keep your feet there, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. Do you realise that this is the very path that goes along through Mirkwood? And if you let it, it might take you to the Lonely Mountain, or even further into worse places." He used to say that on the path outside the front door at Bag End, especially after he had been out for a long walk. "Well, the road won't sweep me away anywhere for an hour at least," said Pippin, unslinging his pack. The others followed his example, putting their packs against the bank and their legs out into the road. After a rest they had a good lunch, and then more rest. The sun was beginning to get low, and the light of the afternoon was on the land as they went down the hill. So far they had not met a soul on the road. This way was not much used, being hardly fit for carts, and there was little traffic to the woody end. They had been jogging along again for an hour or more when Sam stopped a moment as if listening. They were now on level ground, and the road after much winding lay straight ahead through grassland sprinkled with tall trees, outliers of the approaching woods. "I can hear a pony or horse coming along the road behind," said Sam. They looked back, but the turn of the road prevented them from seeing far. "I wonder if that is Gandalf coming after us," said Frodo. But even as he said it, he had a feeling that it was not so, and a sudden desire to hide from the view of the rider came over him. "It may not matter much," he said apologetically, "but I would rather not be seen in the road by anyone. I'm sick of my doings being noticed and discussed. And if it is Gandalf," he added, as an afterthought, "we can give him a little surprise to pay him out to pay him out for being so late. Let's get out of sight. They looked back, but the turn of the road prevented them from seeing far. Sorry, I've just wrote that part out. The other two ran quickly to the left and down into a little hollow, not far from the road. There they lay flat. Frodo hesitated for a second. Curiosity or some other feeling was struggling with his desire to hide. The sound of hoofs drew nearer. Just in time, he threw himself down in a patch of long grass behind a tree that overshadowed the road. Then he lifted his head and peered cautiously above one of the great roots. Round the corner came a black horse. No hobbit pony, but a full-sized horse, and on it sat a large man who seemed to crouch in his saddle, wrapped in a great black cloak and hood, so that only his boots and the high stirrups showed below. His face was shadowed and invisible. When it reached the tree and was level with Frodo, the horse stopped. The riding figure sat quite still, with its head bowed, as if listening. From inside the hood came a noise, as of someone sniffing to catch an elusive scent. The head turned from side to side of the road. A sudden unreasoning fear of discovery laid hold of Frodo, and he thought of his ring. He hardly dared to breathe, and yet the desire to get it out of his pocket became so strong that he began slowly to move his hand. He felt that he had only to slip it on, and then he would be safe. The advice of Gandalf seemed absurd. Bilbo had used the ring, and I am still in the Shire, he thought, as his hand touched the chain on which it hung. At that moment the rider sat up and shook the reins. The horse stepped forward, walking slowly at first, and then breaking into a quick trot. Frodo crawled to the edge of the road and watched the rider until he dwindled into the distance. He could not be quite sure, but it seemed to him that suddenly, before it passed out of sight, the horse turned aside and went into the trees on the right. "Well, I call that very queer and indeed disturbing," said Frodo to himself, as he walked towards his companions. Pippin and Sam had remained flat in the grass, and had seen nothing. So Frodo described the rider and his strange behaviour. "I can't say why, but I felt certain he was looking or smelling for me, and I also felt certain that I did not want him to discover me. I've never seen or felt anything like it in the Shire before." "But what has one of the big people got to do with us?" said Pippin. "And what is he doing in this part of the world?" "There are some men about," said Frodo, "down in the South Farthing. They've had trouble with big people, I believe, but I have never heard of anything like this rider. I wonder where he comes from." "Begging your pardon," put in Sam suddenly, "I know where he comes from. It's from Hobbiton that this here Black Rider comes, unless there's more than one. I don't know where he's going to." "What do you mean?" said Frodo sharply, looking at him in astonishment. "Why didn't you speak up before?" "I've only just remembered, sir. It was like this. When I got back to our hole yesterday evening with the key, my dad, he says to me, 'Hello, Sam,' he says. 'I thought you were away with Mr. Frodo this morning. There's been a strange customer asking for Mr. Baggins of Bag End, and he's only just gone. I've sent him on to Bucklebury. Not that I liked the sound of him. He seemed mighty put out when I told him Mr. Baggins had left his old home for good. Hissed at me, he did. It gave me quite a shudder. What sort of fellow was he?' I says to the gaffer. 'I don't know,' says he, 'but he wasn't a hobbit. He was a tall and black like,' and he stopped over me. 'I reckon it was one of the big folk from foreign parts. He spoke funny.' I couldn't stay to hear more, sir, since you were waiting, and I didn't give much heed to it myself. The gaffer is getting old and more than a bit blind, and it must have been near dark when this fellow came up the hill and found him taking the air at the end of our row. I hope he hasn't done no harm, sir, nor me. The gaffer can't be blamed anyway, said Frodo. As a matter of fact, I heard him talking to a stranger who seemed to be inquiring for me, and I nearly went and asked him who it was. I wish I had, or you had told me about it before. I might have been more careful on the road. Still, there may be no connection between the rider and the gaffer stranger, said Pippin. We left Hobbiton secretly enough, and I don't see how he could have followed us. What about the smelling, sir? Said Sam. And the gaffer said he was a black chap. I wish I'd waited for Gandalf, Frodo muttered, but perhaps it would only have made matters worse. Then you know or guessed something about this rider, said Pippin, who had caught the muttered words. I don't know, and I would rather not guess, said Frodo. All right, cousin Frodo, you keep your secret for the present. If you want to be mysterious, in the meanwhile, what are we going to do? I should, I should like a bite and a sup, but somehow I think we had better move on from here. Your talk of sniffing riders with invisible noses has unsettled me. Yes, I think we will move on now, said Frodo, but not in the road, in case that rider comes back, or another follows him. We ought to do a good step more today. Buckland is still miles away. The shadows of the trees were long and thin on the grass as they started off again. They now kept a stone's throw to the left of the road, but kept out of sight of it as much as they could. But this hindered them, for the grass was thick and tussocky, and the ground uneven, and the trees began to draw together into thickets. The sun had gone down red behind the hills at their backs, and evening was coming on before they came back to the road at the end of the long level over, which it had run straight for some miles. At that point it bent left and went down into the lowlands of the Yale, making for Stock, but a lane branched right, winding through a wood of ancient oak trees on its way to Woodhall. That's the way for us, said Frodo. Not far from the road meeting, they came on the huge hulk of a tree. It was still alive and had leaves on the small branches that had put out round the broken stumps of its long fallen limbs, but it was hollow and could be entered by a great crack on the side away from the road. The hobbits crept inside and sat there upon a floor of old leaves and decayed wood. They rested and had a light meal, talking quietly and listening from time to time. Twilight was about them as they crept back to the lane. The west wind was sighing in the branches. Leaves were whispering. Soon the road began to fall gently but steadily into the dusk. A star came out above the trees in the darkening east before them. They went abreast and in step to keep up their spirits. After a time, as the stars grew thicker and brighter, the feeling of disquiet left them, and they no longer listened for the sound of hoofs. They began to hum softly, as hobbits have a way of doing, and they walk along, especially when they are drawing near to home at night. With most hobbits, it is a supper song or a bed song, but these hobbits hummed a walking song, though not, of course, without any mention of supper and bed. Bilbo Baggins had made the words to a tune that was as old as the hills, and taught it to Frodo as they walked in the lanes of Water Valley and talked about adventure. Upon upon the hearth the fire is red, beneath the roof there is a bed. But not yet weary, at our feet, still round the corner we may meet a sudden tree or standing stone that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. Hill and water, under sky, pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner they may wait, a new road or secret gate. And though we may pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way, and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun. Apple, thorn, and nut and slow, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and dell, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadows of the edge of night, until the stars are all alright. Then the world behind the home ahead will wander back to home and bed. Mist and twilight, cloud and shade, away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp, and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. The song ended. And now to bed, and now to bed, sang Pippin in a high voice. Hush, said Frodo. I think I hear hoofs again. They stopped suddenly and stood as silent as tree shadows, listening. There was a sound of hoofs in the lane, some way behind, but coming slow and clear down the wind. Quickly and quietly they slipped off the path and ran into the deeper shade under the oak trees. Don't let us go too far, said Frodo. I don't want to be seen, but I want to see if it's another Black Rider. Very well, said Pippin. But don't forget the sniffing. The hoofs drew nearer. They had no time to find any hiding place better than the general darkness under the trees. Sam and Pippin crouched behind a large tree bole, while Frodo crept back a few yards towards the lane. It showed grey and pale, a line of fading light through the wood. Above it the stars were thick in the dim sky, but there was no moon. The sound of hoofs stopped. As Frodo watched, he saw something dark pass across the lighter space between the two trees, and then halt. It looked like the black shade of a horse led by a smaller black shadow. The black the black shadow stood close to the point where they had left the path, and it swayed from side to side. Frodo thought that he'd heard the sound of sniffing. The shadow bent to the ground, and then began to crawl towards him. Once more the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before, so strong he almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand was groping in his pocket. But at that moment there came a sound like mingled song and laughter. Clear voices rose and fell in the starlit air. The black shadow straightened up and retreated. It climbed onto the shadowy horse, and seemed to vanish across the lane into the darkness on the other side. Frodo breathed again. "Elves!" exclaimed Sam in a hoarse whisper. "Elves, sir!" He would have burst out the trees and dashed off towards the voices if they had not pulled him back. "Yes, it is elves," said Frodo. "One can meet them sometimes in the woody end, though they don't live in the Shire, but they wander into it in spring and autumn, out of their own lands, away beyond the Tower Hills. I'm thankful that they do." He did not see, but that Black Rider stopped just here and was actually crawling towards us when the song began. As soon as he heard the voices, he slipped away. "What about the elves?" said Sam, too excited to trouble about the rider. "Can't we go and see them?" "Listen, they are coming this way," said Frodo. "We've only to wait." The singing drew nearer. One clear voice rose now above the others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew only a little, and the others knew nothing. Yet the sound blending with the melody seemed to shape itself in their thought into words which they only partly understood. This was the song as Frodo heard it. Snow White, O Lady clear, O Queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here, amid the world of woven trees. Gilthanel, O Elberth, clear are thy skies and bright thy breath. Snow White, we sing to thee, in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in the sunless year, with shining hand by her were sown, in windy fields now bright and clear, we see your silver blossom blown. O Elberth, Gilthanil, we still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western seas. The song ended. These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elberth, said Frodo in amazement. Few of the fairest folk are ever seen in the Shire. Not many now remain in Middle Earth, east of the Great Sea. This is indeed a strange chance. The hobbits sat in the shadow by the wayside. Before long, the elves came down the lane towards the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see the starlight glimmering on their hair and in their eyes. They bore no lights, yet as they walked, a shimmer, like the light of the moon above the rim of the hills before it rises, seemed to fall about their feet. They were now silent, and as the last elf passed, he turned and looked towards the hobbits and laughed. Hail, Frodo! He cried. You're abroad late, or are you perhaps lost? Then he called aloud to the others, and all the company stopped and gathered round. This is indeed wonderful, they said. 3 hobbits in a wood at night. We've not seen such things since Bilbo went away. What is the meaning of it? The meaning of it, fair people, said Frodo, is simply that we seem to be going the same way as you are. I like walking under the stars, but I would welcome your company. But we've no need of other company, and hobbits are so dull, they laughed. And how do you know that we go the same way as you? For you do not know whither we are going. And how do you know my name? Said Frodo in return. We know many things, they said. We have seen you often before with Bilbo, though you may not have seen us. Who are you, and who's your lord? Asked Frodo. I am Gildor, answered their leader, the elf who had first hailed him. Gildor and Glorian, of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and mostly of our kindred have long ago departed, and we too are now only tarrying here a while, ere we return over the great sea. But some of our kinsfolk dwell still in peace in Rivendell. Come now, Frodo, tell us what you're doing, for we see that there is some shadow of fear upon you. Oh, wise people, interrupted Pippin eagerly, tell us about the Black Riders. Black Riders? They said in low voices. Why do you ask about Black Riders? Because 2 Black Riders have overtaken us today. One has done so twice, said Pippin. Only a little while ago he slipped away as you drew near. The elves did not answer at once, but spoke together softly in their own tongue. At length Gildor turned to the hobbits. We will not speak of this here, he said. We think you'd best come now with us. It's not our custom, but for this time we will take you on our road, and you shall lodge with us tonight, if you will. Oh, fair folk, this is good fortune beyond my hope, said Pippin. Sam was speechless. I thank you indeed, Gildor and Glorion, said Frodo, bowing. Elen Sila, Luminen, Omnitilevo. That was my attempt at Elvish. I'm sorry. A star shines on the hour of our meeting, he added in the high elven speech. Be careful, friends, cried Gildor, laughing. Speak no secrets. Here is a scholar in the ancient tongue. Bilbo was a good master. Hail, elf friend, he said, bowing to Frodo. Come now with your friends, and join our company. You'd best walk in the middle so that you may not stray. You may be weary before we halt. Why, where are you going? Asked Frodo. For tonight we go to the woods on the hills above Woodhall. It's some miles, but you shall have a rest at the end of it, and it will shorten your journey tomorrow. They now marched on again in silence, and passed like shadows and faint lights. For elves, even more than hobbits, could walk when they wished without sound or footfall. Pippin soon began to feel sleepy, and staggered once or twice, but each time a tall elf at his side put out his arm and saved him from a fall. Sam walked along at Frodo's side, as if in a dream, with an expression on his face half of fear and half of astonished joy. The woods on either side became denser. The trees were now younger and thicker, and as the lane went lower, running down into a fold of the hills, there were many deep breaks of hazel on the rising slopes at either hand. At last the elves turned aside from the path. A green ride lay almost unseen through the thickets on the right, and this they followed as it wound away back up the wooded slopes onto the top of a shoulder of the hills that stood out into the lower land of the river valley. Suddenly they came out of the shadows on the trees, and before them lay a wide space of grass, grey under the night. On three sides the woods pressed upon it, but eastwards the ground fell steeply, and the tops of the dark trees growing at the bottom of the slope were below their feet. Beyond, the low lands lay dim and flat under the stars. Nearer at hand, and a few lights twinkled in the village of Woodhall. The elves sat on the grass and spoke together in the soft voices. They seemed to take no further notice of the hobbits. Frodo and his companions wrapped themselves in cloaks and blankets, and drowsiness stole over them. The night grew on, and the lights in the valley went out. Pippin fell asleep, pillowed on a green hillock. Away high in the east swung Remarath and netted stars, and slowly above the mists red Borgle rose, glowing like a jewel of fire. Then by some shift of airs all the mist was drawn away, like a veil, and there leaned up, as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Manelvagor, with his shining belt. The elves all burst into song. Suddenly under the trees a fire sprang up with a red light. Come, the elves called to the hobbits, come, now it is the time for speech and merriment. Just gonna have a drink of my beer and maybe a wee puff of my vape. Mm. Excellent. Moving on. Pippin sat up and rubbed his eyes. He shivered. There's a fire in the hall, and food for hungry guests, said an elf, standing before him. At the south end of the Green's ward there was an opening. There the green floor ran into the wood, and formed a wide space like a hall, roofed by the boughs of the trees. The great trunks ran like pillars down each side. In the middle there was a wood fire blazing, and upon the tree pillars torches with light of gold and silver were burning steadily. The elves sat round the fire upon the grass, or upon the sawn rings of old trunks. Some went to and fro bearing cups and pouring drink, others brought food on heaped plates and dishes. This is poor fare, they said to the hobbits, for we are lodging in the greenwood, far from our halls. If you are ever our guests at home, we will treat you better. Seems to me good enough for a birthday party, said Frodo. Pippin afterwards recalled little of either food or drink, for his mind was filled with the light upon the elf faces, and the sound of voices so various and so beautiful that he fell in the waking dream. But he remembered that there was bread, surpassing the savour of a fair white loaf to one who is starving, and fruits sweet as wild berries, and richer than the tended fruits of gardens. He drained a cup that was filled with a fragrant draught, cool as a clear fountain, golden as a summer afternoon. Sam could never describe in words, nor picture clearly to himself, what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the chief events of his life. The nearest he ever got was to say, "Well, sir, if I could grow apples like that, I would call myself a gardener," but it was the sing that went to my heart, if you know what I mean. Frodo sat, eating, drinking, and talking with delight, but his mind was chiefly on the words spoken. He knew a little of the elf speech, and listened eagerly. Now and again he spoke to those that served him and thanked him in their own language. They smiled at him and said, laughing, "Here is a jewel among hobbits." After a while Pippin fell asleep, and was lifted up and borne away to bower under the trees. There he was laid upon a soft bed, and slept the rest of the night away. Sam refused to leave his master. When Pippin had gone, he came and sat curled up at Frodo's feet, where at last he nodded and closed his eyes. Frodo remained long awake, talking with Gildor. They spoke of many things, old and new, and Frodo questioned Gildor much about the happenings in the wide world outside the Shire. The tidings were mostly sad and ominous, of gathering darkness, the wars of men, and the fight of the elves. At last Frodo asked the question that was nearest to his heart. "Tell me, Gildor, have you ever seen Bilbo since he left us?" Gildor smiled. "Yes," he answered, "twice. He said farewell to us in this very spot, but I saw him once again far from here." He would say no more about Bilbo, and Frodo fell silent. "You do not ask me or tell me much that concerns yourself, Frodo," said Gildor, "but I already know a little, and I can read more in your face, and in the thought behind your questions. You're leaving the Shire, and yet you doubt that you will find what you seek, or accomplish what you intend, or that you will ever return. Is not that so?" "It is," said Frodo. "But I thought my going was a secret known only to Gandalf and my faithful Sam." He looked down at Sam, who was snoring gently. "The secret will not reach the enemy from us," said Gildor. "The enemy?" said Frodo. "Then you know why I'm leaving the Shire?" "I do not know for what reason the enemy is pursuing you," answered Gildor, "but I perceive that he is, strange indeed though that seems to me, and I warn you that peril is now both before you and behind you, and upon either side." "You mean the riders?" "I fear that they were servants of the enemy." "What are the Black Riders?" "Has Gandalf told you nothing?" "Nothing about such creatures." "Then I think it is not for me to say more, lest terror should keep you from your journey, for it seems to me that you have set out only just in time. If indeed you are in time, you must now make haste, and neither stay nor turn back, for the Shire is no longer any protection to you." "I cannot imagine what information could be more terrifying than your hints and warnings," exclaimed, exclaimed Frodo. "I knew that danger lay ahead, of course, but I did not expect to meet it in our own Shire. Can't a hobbit walk from the water to the river in peace?" "But it's not your own Shire," said Gildor. "Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot ever fence it out." "I know, and yet it's always seemed so safe and familiar. What can I do now? My plan was to leave the Shire secretly and make my way to Rivendell, but now my footsteps are dogged before I even get to Buckland." "I think you should still follow that plan," said Gildor. "I do not think the road will prove too hard for your courage, but if you desire clearer counsel, you should ask Gandalf. I do not know the reason for your flight, and I therefore do not know by what means your pursuers will assail you. These things Gandalf must know. I suppose that you will see him before you leave the Shire?" "I hope so, but that is another thing that makes me anxious. I've been expecting Gandalf for many days. He was to have come to Hobbiton at the latest 2 nights ago, but he has never appeared. Now I'm wondering what can have happened. Should I wait for him?" Gildor was silent for a moment. "I do not like this news," he said at last. "That Gandalf should be late does not bode well, but it is said, 'Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger.' The choice is yours, to go or wait." "It is also said," answered Frodo, "Go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes." "Is it indeed?" laughed Gildor. "Elves seldom, elves seldom give unguarded advice, for advice is a dangerous gift, even from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. But what would you? You have not told me all concerning yourself, and how then shall I choose better than you? But if you demand advice, I will for friendship's sake give it. I think you should now go at once without delay, and if Gandalf does not come before you set out, then I also advise this: do not go alone. Take such friends as are trusty and willing. Now you should be grateful, for I do not give this counsel gladly. The elves have their own labours and their own sorrows, and they are little concerned with the ways of hobbits, or of any other creatures upon earth. Our paths cross theirs seldom, by chance or purpose. In this meeting there may be more than chance, but the purpose is not clear to me, and I fear to say too much." "I am deeply grateful," said Frodo, "but I wish you would tell me plainly what the Black Riders are. If I take your advice, I may not see Gandalf for a long while, and I ought to know what is the danger that pursues me." "It is not enough to know what they are, servants. Is it not enough to know that they are servants of the enemy?" answered Gildor. "Flee them. Speak no words to them. They are deadly. Ask no more of me. But my heart forebodes that, ere all is ended, you, Frodo, son of Drogo, will know more of these fell things than Gildor and Glorian. May Elberth protect you." "But where shall I find courage?" asked Frodo. "That is what I chiefly need." "Courage is found in unlikely places," said Gildor. "Be of good hope. Sleep now. In the morning we shall have gone, but we will send our messages through the lands. The wandering companies shall know of your journey, and those that have power for good shall be in the watch. I name you elf friend, and may the stars shine upon the end of your road. Seldom have we had such a delight in strangers, and it's fair to hear words of the ancient speech from the lips of other wanderers in the world." Frodo felt sleep coming upon him, even as Gildor finished speaking. "I will sleep now," he said, and the elf led him to the bower beside Pippin, and he threw himself upon a bed and fell at once into a dreamless slumber. Chapter 4: A Short Cut to Mushrooms. In the morning, Frodo woke up refreshed. He was lying in a bower made by a living tree, with branches laced and drooping to the grounds. His bed was of fern and grass, deep and soft, and strangely fragrant. The sun was shining through the fluttering leaves, which were still green upon the tree. He jumped up and went out. Sam was sitting on the grass near the edge of the wood. Pippin was standing studying the sky and weather. There was no sign of the elves. "They've left us fruit and drink and bread," said Pippin. "Come and have your breakfast. The bread tastes almost as good as it did last night. I did not want to leave you any," but Sam insisted. Frodo sat down beside Sam and began to eat. "What's the plan for today?" asked Pippin. "To walk to Buckleberry as quickly as possible," answered Frodo, and gave his attention to the food. "Do you think we shall see anything of those riders?" asked Pippin, cheerfully. Under the morning sun, the prospect of seeing a whole troop of them did not seem very alarming to him. "Yes, probably," said Frodo, not liking the reminder. "But I hope to get across the river without their seeing us. Did you find anything about them from Gildor?" "Not much, only hints and riddles," said Frodo, evasively. "Did you ask about the sniffing?" "We didn't discuss it," said Frodo, with his mouth full. "You should have. I'm sure it was very important." "In that case, I'm sure Gildor would have refused to explain it," said Frodo sharply. And then leave me in peace for a bit. I do not want to answer a string of questions while I'm eating. I want to think. Good heavens, said Pippin. At breakfast? He walked away towards the edge of the green. From Frodo's mind, the bright morning, treacherously bright, he thought, had not banished the fear of pursuit, and pondered the words of Gildor. The merry voice of Pippin came to him. He was running on the green turf and singing. No, I could not, he said to himself. It's one thing to take my young friends walking over the Shire with me until we are hungry and weary, and food and bed are sweet. To take them into exile where hunger and weariness may have no cure is quite another. Even if they are willing to come, the inheritance is mine alone. I don't think I ought to even take Sam. He looked at Sam Gamgee and discovered that Sam was watching him. Well, Sam, he said, what about it? I'm leaving the Shire as soon as I ever can. In fact, I've made up my mind now not even to wait a day at Crick Hollow, if it can be helped. Very good, sir. You still mean to come with me? I do. It's going to be very dangerous, Sam. It's already dangerous. Most likely neither of us will come back. If you don't come back, sir, then I shan't. Then I shan't. That's certain, said Sam. Don't you leave him, they said to me. Leave him, I said. I never mean to. I'm going with him. If he climbs to the moon, and if any of those black riders try to stop him, they'll have Sam Gamgee to reckon with, I said. They laughed. Who are they? And what are you talking about? The elves, sir. We had some talk last night, and they seemed to know you were going away, so I didn't see the use of denying it. Wonderful folk, elves, sir, wonderful. They are, said Frodo. Do you like them still now you have had a closer view? They seem a bit above my likes and dislikes, so to speak, answered Sam slowly. I don't seem to matter what I think about them. They're quite different from what I expected. So old and young and so gay and sad, as it were. Frodo looked at Sam rather startled, half expecting to see some outward sign of the odd change that seemed to have come over him. It did not sound like the voice of the old Sam Gamgee that he thought he knew, but it looked like the old Sam Gamgee sitting there, except that his face was unusually thoughtful. Do you feel any need to leave the Shire now that your wish to see them has come true already? He asked. Yes, sir, I don't know how to say it, but after last night I feel different. I seem to see ahead in a kind of way. I know we are going to take a very long road into darkness, but I know I can't turn back. It isn't to see elves now, nor dragons, nor mountains that I want. I don't really know what I want, but I have something to do before the end, and it lies ahead, not in the Shire. I must see it through, sir, if you understand me. I don't altogether, but I understand that Gandalf chose me a good companion. I'm content. We will go together. Frodo finished his breakfast in silence, then standing up, looked over the land ahead, and called to Pippin. All ready to start? He said as Pippin ran up. We must be getting off at once. We slept late, and there are a good many miles to go. You slept late, you mean, said Pippin. I was up long before, and we are only waiting for you to finish eating and thinking. I've finished both now, and I'm going to make for Buckleberry Ferry as quickly as possible. I'm not going out of the way, but to the road we left last night. I'm going to cut straight across the country from here. Then you're going to fly, said Pippin. You won't cut straight on foot anywhere in this country. We can cut straighter than the road anyway, answered Frodo. The ferry is east of Woodhall, but the hard road curves away to the left. You can see a bend of it away north over there. It goes round the north end of the Marish, so as to strike the causeway from the bridge above Stock. But that is miles out of the way. We could save a quarter of the distance if we made a line for the ferry from where we stand. Short cuts make long delays, argued Pippin. "The country's rough round here, and there are bogs and all kinds of difficulties down in the Marish. I know the land in these parts, and if you're worrying about black riders, I can't see that any worse meeting them on a road than in a wood or a field." "It's less easy to find people in the woods and fields," answered Frodo. "And if you're supposed to be in the road, there is some chance that you will be looked for on the road and not off of it." "All right," said Pippin. "I'll follow you into every bog and ditch, but it is hard. I'd counted on passing the Golden Perch at Stock before sundown. The best beer in the East Farthing, or used to be. It's a long time since I tasted it." "That settles it," said Frodo. "Short cuts make delays, but inns make longer ones. At all costs, we must keep you away from the Golden Perch. We want to get to Bucklebury before dark. What do you say, Sam?" "I'll go along with you, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, in spite of private misgivings and a deep regret for the best beer in the East Farthing. "Then if we are going to toil through bog and briar, let's go now," said Pippin. It was already nearly as hot as it had been the day before, but clouds were beginning to come up from the west. It looked likely to turn to rain. The hobbits scrambled down a steep green bank and plunged into the thick trees below. Their course had been chosen to leave Woodhall to the left and to cut slanting through the woods that clustered along the eastern side of the hills until they reached the flats beyond. Then they could make straight for the ferry over the country that was open. Except for a few ditches and fences, Frodo reckoned they had 18 miles to go in a straight line. He soon found that the thicket was closer and more tangled than it had appeared. There were no paths in the undergrowth, and they did not get on very fast. When they struggled to the bottom of the bank, they found a stream running down from the hills behind, and a deeply dug bed with steep, slippery sides overhung with brambles. Most inconveniently, it cut across the line they had chosen. They could not jump over it, nor indeed get across it at all without getting wet, scratched, and muddy. They halted, wondering what to do. "First check," said Pippin, smiling grimly. Sam Gamgee looked back. Through an opening in the trees he caught a glimpse of the top of the green bank from which they had climbed down. "Look," he said, clutching Frodo by the arm. They all looked, and on the edge, high above them, they saw against the sky a horse standing beside it. They saw, sorry. Then they saw against the sky a horse standing. Beside it stooped a black figure. They at once gave up any idea of going back. Frodo led the way, and plunged quickly into the thick bushes beside the stream. "Whew!" he said to Pippin. "We were both right. The short cut has gone crooked already, but we got under cover only just in time. You've got sharp ears, Sam. Can you hear anything coming?" They stood still, almost holding their breath as they listened, but there was no sound of pursuit. "I don't fancy he would try bringing his horse down that bank," said Sam, "but I guess he knows we came down it. We'd better get going on." And with that, that is our our hour over. And again, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. If you did enjoy, please give it a like. If you haven't already subscribed, please do that as well. And we shall catch you next week. In fact, no, not next week. 2 weeks from now. That is Luis of Atlair that will be appearing for an interview. I haven't had an interview for a couple of months, but people were not, I suppose, coming on. Yep. Anyway, like, subscribe. Catch you in 2 weeks. So that'll be the 28th. That would be that Sunday. Again, thanks very much.